Chapter 9. Early Monday morning, Dax stood at the courthouse door when it opened. He met Ed Atchison to ask permission to leave horses at the Smith place while he was inspecting the property, which the county now held the title to. Atchison had no objection. Then, Dax walked his letter to Polly to the Western Union office. Dax and John Smith spent the next week riding over the ranch Dax envisioned. Most of the rolling hills had been farmed in recent years. There clearly had not been enough rainfall to grow an abundant wheat crop, but there were enough springs for stock water. Higher up, the unfarmed land was steep with granite boulders scattered haphazardly by an ancient glacier. A small creek, engulfed in thorn brush, ran through the center of a deep canyon, which flattened into rolling farmland. After consideration, Dax offered Meadowlark County $7.00 per acre for 19,840 acres, including all improvements, payable in cash within 30 days. In the regular first Wednesday evening of the month meeting of the Meadowlark County Commissioners, Dax's offer was accepted with little deliberation. Dax thought he might have to pay both Trent Webster and Nate Davis up to $14 an acre for their properties. He needed to have $152,320 available to close these transactions. Dax prepaid $14 for his hotel room for the next week and informed the hotel manager he would be gone for a day or two. He also told John he would continue to pay him, but he didn't have anything for him to do for at least 2 days. He bought groceries for camping and packed his bed and shovel in his car. At daylight the next morning, Dax loaded his guns and ammunition and then drove off to gather his stashed money. By 10 o'clock, he was parked at the secluded drainage where he had stayed all night 12 days before when he buried his cash. He saw no evidence that anyone had traveled on this backcountry road since. Dax had never counted the money in the duffels, only one of the banded bundles of $100 bills in the leather briefcase, which contained $10,000. There were 50 bundles, $500,000, he thought to himself. Someone must have been coming to the bank to pick it up for a large transaction. With his pistol in its shoulder holster, his .30-30 in one hand, and his shovel in the other, Dax paced his way from his stake toward the closest duffel. When he came to the top of the ridge, he could see a marmot standing, chirping at him from where the duffel was buried. He gently put down his shovel and leveled his .30-30 to the center of the varmint. The big groundhog fell over, spasmed, and disappeared down its hole. Dax grabbed his shovel and ran to the spot. He shoveled the softened earth where he had dug before and found a chewed-up duffel. "Shit," Dax grumbled as he dug around the bag. He lifted the duffel, unzipped it, and dumped shredded money and the bloody, dead marmot out onto the ground. "Shredded bloody money," he mumbled to himself. "What good is shredded, bloody money?" He sat on the ground by the pile and sorted out the coins, as well as the still intact, clean bills, and rolled them into the canvas from his bedroll. He put the bloody money and bloody shreds into what was left of the chewed bag and rolled the non-bloody shreds into a blanket. Then he packed the bag, canvas, and blanket in his car. This was an unexpected disaster. He had thought of everything and was lucky so far. He had eluded the police and the mafia, moved his money across the country safely, and then this varmint cost him what looked like $50,000. "I would have given the son of a bitch my bed if he had asked for it," Dax said to the bare hillside as he buried the big squirrel. After his disappointing experience, Dax traced down the locations of the other 4 duffels. They all seemed to be safely buried, and nothing had bothered them. He left them where they were. He needed to transfer them to a safe place where he could watch them, but until he paid for his land, he had no place. Next, Dax dug up the leather briefcase and decided to drive back to town. Carrying a briefcase into his hotel room would not be conspicuous. Nevertheless, he felt vulnerable. Back in Conifer Cliffs that night, Dax parked his car under a porch light next to the hotel so he could watch it through the window in his room. He packed the briefcase and canvas full of loose bills into his room. He left the shredded and bloody money on the floorboards of his car. He couldn't sleep. Nothing was secure. At 4 a.m., Dax dumped his clothes out of their duffel, put half the money from his briefcase and the canvas inside, grabbed his 30-30, and went to his car. He drove to Smith's place and buried his duffel in a sawdust pile next to John Smith's sawmill. Then, Dax buried the damaged money in a nearby grove of trees. Dax returned to the hotel at 6 a.m. with his briefcase. He took it and his 30-30 with him into the bathroom and hurriedly took a bath. After his bath, he wiped off the briefcase with a washcloth and dressed himself in clean Levi's and a cotton shirt. It was now 7 a.m. An hour remained until the courthouse would open. Dax was starving, adrenaline being his only fuel since noon the day before. He didn't feel good about walking around with his briefcase, and he didn't feel good about leaving it out of sight. Every minute seemed like an hour, waiting for Atchison to get to work so he could close the deal and be relieved of some of his cash. Finally, through his hotel window, Dax saw Atchison enter the courthouse. By 11 o'clock, Dax had counted out $138,880 and given it to Atchison for the deed to 19,840 acres of ranch land, including improvements. Still, with over $100,000 in his briefcase, he stopped by John Smith's and bought the 4 horses at the ranch. "If you're going to work for me, you ought to move back up to your house," Dax told John. "It doesn't belong to the county anymore. This is a dream come true. But where will you live?" John asked. "Tell me about the beautiful brown brick house across the street from the closed bank," Dax asked. "It belonged to the guy who owned the bank. When he lost the bank, he also lost the house. I think they belong to the bank in Helena now, but I heard they were about to go broke, too." "I suppose Atchison knows the particulars," Dax commented. "Yeah, I suppose he does," John replied. "Get moved in up there as soon as you can and start fixing fences on the whole place. Think about where we can get 700 good cows, preferably Herefords." "I need to go see Trent and Nate," Dax said. "If you're going to put 700 cows on that ground, you better know what they're going to eat this winter. They will need lots of hay, and I don't know where you'll get it," John said with concern, sensing that Dax was moving too fast and not thinking things through. "Yeah, keep your eye out for hay too," Dax agreed as he hurriedly got into his car. Dax drove to see Trent and Nate and made handshake deals with both to buy their places for $10 an acre. By the middle of August, Dax had been relieved of $160,000 of his cash and was the owner of a vast ranch, a mansion on Main Street, and an empty bank building with all the facilities and capital to start a bank of his own. Dax now employed the entire Smith family. John lined out his sons to fix the unmaintained fences on the ranch, then visited all the ranches within a 50-mile radius looking for cattle to buy. Elaine and Samantha cleaned and painted inside his new house while Dax still lived in the hotel. Dax hired Fred Larson, the former bank owner's right-hand man, who had become unemployed when the bank closed 4 months prior. Fred deposited $25,000 startup capital of Dax's money into the bank's vault. Dax now employed 2 good men to handle the day-to-day business of his 2 entities. It was time to send for Polly. He went to the Western Union office and sent her a telegram. "Dear Polly, it has been nearly a month since I last saw you. I think about you every day. I want you to be comfortable when you arrive in Conifer Cliffs, and I think I have everything in place now. Please come to me as soon as possible so we can start our life together. I have arranged for us to marry as soon as you arrive. Love, Dax." Dax dug a hole in the crawl space under his house, big enough to accommodate the duffel still buried in the mountains and the remainder of the money hidden at the Smith place. He lined the hole with bricks and built a wooden lid. When Dax knew the Smiths were not at their home, he dug up all the remaining money he had stashed there and secured it under his house. On Wednesday, August 16, Dax drove out to the hills to unearth the rest of his money. The day was hot and dry. The spring flowers blooming there on his first visit were now dry stems. The muddy draws had dried up, and the ruts in the road were hard and rough. He parked near the metal stake still in the ground where he had pounded it 5 weeks earlier. Today would be easy. He needed to dig up the 4 remaining bags and place them in the brick in hiding place. The money needed to be counted and bundled in his basement, to which only he possessed a key. Dax dug up each bag and filled the holes, keeping his .30-30 in close proximity and his .38 in his shoulder holster strapped to his body. He sat by the spring with the 4 bags and ate some salami and cheese, thinking about his life, the hardships, and recent blessings. It was 2 in the afternoon. For the first time, Dax noticed total silence. He thanked this place, the place that held his secret. The past few weeks had been stressful, but now he could settle into a comfortable life, having all the necessary ingredients to maintain it. Dax considered taking only 1 duffel of money home at a time to avoid losing them all if he was wrong. But he also did not want someone watching where he was going and find what he had left on the mountain. Again, he was thinking of the best way to move this large amount of money to a safe place without having trouble. He finally decided to move it all at once and get it over with. Dax stalled until he would be arriving home well after dark. Hopefully, the Conifer Cliffs inhabitants would soundless sleep while he secured the money in his hiding place. By 2 a.m., everything was done. Dax felt immense relief. He was too tired to return to his hotel room, so he took a hot bath in his own house. He soaked in the hot water, thinking of his next moves, and fell asleep. When Dax awoke, the sun shone through the east-facing window. His fingers were pruned, and the water was cold. He felt invigorated to get up and start his day. He dried and dressed, then walked to Dyson's. After breakfast, he checked out of his hotel room, where he had lived since his arrival in Conifer Cliffs. By noon, he had dropped off his laundry, put his clothes in the bedroom closet at his house, and picked up a telegram from Polly. She would be arriving on the train in only 5 more days. He needed to get the money in order before she arrived. He would spend the next few days counting, bundling, and hiding it in multiple places. He didn't want his new bank manager or wife to know how much cash he had or where it came from.